Hey everyone, my name is Luke and welcome to my channel. Throughout the course of this video, I'm going to hopefully take you step by step the entire way from start to finish and teach you how to take your one-shot color narrowband data, taken through filters such as the Optilong L Extreme or other similar filters which often comes out looking something like this, and instead breathe some more life into it and make it come out a little bit more like this. Now, if you're interested in following along and doing this with your own data, there will be a few things that you need to take care of before we can actually get started with this tutorial. And indeed, there are a few tools you need installing into your PixInsight. They're all free, by the way. So this is, if you just have PixInsight, then you can basically follow along at no extra cost with this tutorial. And I'll outline all those tools for you now and the steps that you need to take if you're processing your own data. For those who are interested, I will be making a download link to this exact data that I'm going to be processing throughout the course of this video just in the description box down below, so you can process in parallel with me side by side with the video open if you wish. For the purposes of making learning as easy as possible, to be removing some more variables, and maybe then down the line, once you're more comfortable with the process, you can move on to processing your own data, which is going to throw up more unique challenges. Now, first things first, you are going to need a few things installed, as I mentioned. The first of which are going to be this set of color masks and the masking blur tool provided by my friend Bill Blanch, and he created all these tools, and they're absolutely integral to this process, and you really will need them downloading and installing. I will provide a link to these in the description box down below. It's just to my Google Drive, and it's a tiny little file, about 9 kilobytes or so. The next thing that you'll need is an installed and working version of StarNet. Now, you can also use Star Exterminator for this, but I'm aiming to try and use free tools as much as possible to make this totally accessible for anybody who's interested in pursuing this kind of processing. And if you haven't already updated from StarNet version 1 to StarNet version 2, then this is the perfect time to do it, because it really is a night and day difference between the two. And I find that the free version of StarNet here, just StarNet 2, is just about as good as Star Exterminator in every single test that I've run. In fact, in some cases, it's been better. Now, last and not by any means least, the final thing that you're going to need to follow along with this is the Easy Processing Suite by Dark Archon. Again, I'll provide a link to this in the description box down below, but if you have this installed already, you can skip this part. But if you don't, it's just a case of going to Resources, Updates, Manage Repositories, and point it to this link here. Click Add, and it'll do the rest. Basically, the next time you start PixInsight, you should have access to all of these tools. Now finally, if you're working along with this tutorial using your own data, there will be a few things that you need to take care of before we can make an actual start in the meat and potatoes of this particular dish. And that's that you're going to need to have it cropped so that there's no stacking artifacts, no kind of staggered edges or anything like that visible in the images. That's going to spoil what we're trying to do later. You're going to need to make sure there's no gradients throughout the image, be they top to bottom or left to right, or however they've manifested themselves in your image. You need to expunge it completely of them at this point, either using automatic background extraction, dynamic background extraction, or light pollution removal in Astro Pixel Processor if you have it. That's the way I did this particular file here, which is why it's already nice and clean and ready to go. And finally, you will also need to do a background neutralization. So let's say for this image here, perfect place to do it would be somewhere like this corner, just representing a background area of space gray. I haven't selected any bright stars, I haven't selected any nebula or anything like that. And you just run basically process, color calibration, and background neutralization on that segment. Anyway, all that said, it's been taking a while getting started with this. The last thing I need to mention is that you probably notice if you're working along with this data, it's at a different level of zoom than mine, and that's because I've resampled this data just to make the video move along that much swifter for me. It's going to make the processing times that I have to sit here and wait through to make this video go 4 times faster. You won't need to do this on your own processing. It's just a step that I've done because I don't want to sit here for too long. Right, all that said and done, let's make a start. So once your data looks like this, indeed it'll be ready like this. If you've downloaded the file that I've provided, you can go ahead and hit Script, Easy Processing Suite, and go to Easy Denoise. Now, some people have had trouble with this in the past, that they haven't got TGV Denoise ran. Just make sure that all these boxes here are ticked, and the rest of it I'm just going to be running at complete default settings. I don't need to evaluate the run or anything like that. I just need to click run and wait a few minutes. So I'll come back to you in a moment. Alright, so that's the first part of the tutorial finished. We've now got an image that's still in that color calibrated state and really ready to go, but it has now been run through easy denoise, and it should be in a very nice, smooth and low noise state. So at this point we're actually already ready to make the image non-linear. So we're going to take this initial STF stretch. I'm not going to re-stretch it at this point. I'm just going to apply this one to it by opening the histogram tool, drag the STF up to the bottom bar and drag that across for anybody who's unfamiliar with how to do that, and go ahead and reset both tools. Now we currently have a calibrated non-linear image, and these stars are going to be the ones we want to put back into this image at the end if you wanted to make it a star-filled image. You can also leave them out if you prefer starless renditions. So now at this point the next step is to run StarNet 2 in this case. You do want to click to create a star mask because I will be putting them back in. So just drag that across and wait a few moments for StarNet to run now. Alright, that's now finished, and StarNet 2 has done a fantastic job. It seems to have taken out all traces of all stars on this image. It's just put them over here for me in a new mask, which I'm just going to rename as stars to make it a little bit simpler for the pixel math we'll use later for putting those back in. We can go ahead now and close StarNet 2. So the next step in this process is to bring out those kind of middle colors there, which currently look like they're just kind of whitish. And to do that, I'm going to use the curves tool, but not yet any color masks, because we can't really isolate those colors as they have no vibrancy yet. We could certainly isolate the reds with a color mask if we needed to, but instead we're trying to work on the weaker colors in this image rather than the strong ones. So I'm going to open the curves tool, as I mentioned, and create a preview. I'll just put that somewhere I can see the whole thing. And just with the blue channel selected at this point, I'm going to take the middle of that curves bar and bring it up. Now you can see the effect this is having. This is bringing up the middle, but it's also bringing up this background, and we want to avoid that happening. So how do we do that? We take the bottom where these low level signals lie and bring that back into line. So as you can see, by dragging it into this kind of gentle S, we're re-neutralizing that background while leaving this foreground where the middle signals and the middling strengths, and indeed the higher level signals, which would be like stars and things like that, if they were still in the image, they are still being amplified. So if we just go back and forth there a few times, you can see we've got the effect of boosting that middle, but if you pay attention to the background regions here, they've been left completely alone just by the case of applying that second histogram pip where it should be and pulling it back into line. Now, you can probably see at this point, by just raising the blues alone in combination with that strong background red, we've now ended up with a purple kind of mix going on, and that's not what we're looking for. So before I go ahead and apply that, I'm just going to want to try and rebalance this color back out. So to do that, I'm going to add some green. You see, if I take the green away, the whole thing would go more purple. But if I add it back in, it starts to go kind of a whitish, tailish colour. It's a very weak colour at the moment. But the same thing, of course, is happening when you apply a pip to the middle of the histogram curve window. Sorry, it raises up this background and makes it go green. So you need to do the same thing and take care at this point to get this right. You don't want to be going back and forth and having to do this needlessly later on. It's better to get it right now if possible. So just go make proper use of that preview tool. You can see the image before you make any actual changes to it and see the effect that it's having. So the background looks good, but it still looks a little bit purple to me. So in that case, I'm going to add just that little touch more green to the image. That seems to have done the job. So it's making these weaker colors really start to pop out a little bit more now. So I'm going to go ahead and just apply that to this image. Now, if I just go without changing a thing, now I've took care to kind of set that once, you can see that I could go ahead now and apply that again, and I actually will I want to boost these up quite a long way. That third step would have been too much, I think, so I'm going to leave it at 2 and maybe make a slightly smaller adjustment. So up a little bit in the middle, and again, just take care to drag this back down into line and make sure you're leaving the background regions neutral, while still having the desired effect on the main part of the oxygen in the nebula. And once again, it's gone a little bit purple, so we need to add in a touch more green. And again, take care of the background, so just bring that back down into line once again. You can see I'm just removing a little bit of bias there with that particular green movement. Maybe too much. It's one of those points in the process, I think, where you really need to just take a step back and take your time with this. Don't rush this step. This is really important to get quite right. So that's having the desired effect I was looking for. It's amplified those colors once again, like another step, but not ridiculously so. It's not overpowering now the hydrogen in the image. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And at this point, I'm going to reset that tool and close this preview. So we've now got an image that I'm ready to actually move on with. It looks a little strange at the moment, I grant you, and at this point we need to just hit this little icon up here, which is going to remove the R, G and B components from the image, which I'll now rename. So identifier, that's the R channel, and this one is the B channel. As you can see, the last thing left on it, but it's just too long of an identifier to use pixel math without actually using target modifiers on your pixel math equation. And this one is G, so I'm just going to keep it as simple as possible. Now you can see G and B, there's a big difference in noise between the two, but there's also a big difference in signal. This blue now, because we've pre-stretched it before actually splitting the image and then stretching afterwards, it really does have the lion's share of the oxygen signal in this image. So I want to actually basically make a combination of these two. So I'm going to do that right now by opening process, going down to pixel math. I'll just reset this because I was practicing beforehand to make sure this was as smooth as possible for you. And I'm going to make a 50-50 combination basically by doing B times 0.5 add G times 0.5, and I'll go ahead and create that. Now you can probably see at this point we've got a nice combination between the two. It looks, you know, it's got that kind of bright core of the blue image and slightly smoother background of the green. It's nicely in between kind of what we were wanting. And at this point you can actually get rid of both that blue and that green. And I think really at this moment I'm just going to apply an ever so slightly stronger stretch to this, just to amp it up that little bit more before I move on. So I'll use the curves tool for that and keep an eye on this red at the same time, so I don't kind of exceed the background values and end up with a biased background when I recombine these channels. So I just want a little bit more, and about there would do it. You really don't want to go too far at this point. And again, we'll need to bring this background into line before I proceed, and that looks like I'm having no real effect on the background, just on the foreground object. So I can apply that. That should recombine nicely. I am going to rename this to G. I'm going to pretend that that's now the green channel, and I'm going to make a new blue by combining this red and this green. So to do that, we need red times 0.6 and G, that's for green, times 0.4. And if I just go ahead and apply, that's going to create us our new blue channel. Identifier of B for the sake of simplicity. So now we're back to having 3 channels again, effectively red, green and blue. We're going to use this red channel as the luminance when we recombine, which we're going to do right now using LRGB combination. And the order that you're going to put these in is not necessarily the order that you'd think. It's actually going to be red in the luminance, red in the red channel. Instead of green in the green, we're going to put blue in the green channel and green in the blue channel. I am going to apply chrominance noise reduction to this before I proceed, and just apply globally and wait a moment for it to do that. Okay, that's now finished, and I can go ahead and close the LRGB combination. You could also go ahead and close all of these at this point if you'd like. Just make sure you leave your stars image alone, as you are going to need that later on if you want to put these stars back in. So you can hopefully see at this point we're quite close. We've got something to work on. I'll just make it that little bit bigger. That should do. But to be fair, that yellow around the outside isn't kind of the gold and kind of sandy, sunny colours that I'd like to see in this image. So I'm going to work on those first, and this is where we start to use those colour mask scripts from Bill. So this colour looks closest to yellow to my eye on my screen, so I'm going to go ahead. Sorry, I don't need to actually open it. I will just drag in this and let it create a yellow mask. And as you can see, it's done a nice job of masking out all that yellow region. It has picked up some background values, which we're actually going to clip out right now. So rather than trying to mess around with the mask parameters or anything like that, it's easiest at this point to just make sure you've got the mask selected. Open the histogram tool, select the mask again, and open a preview. Now, if we just drag this left-hand slider across, this is going to control the black point of this mask. And as you can see, as I drag that along, just very carefully, we've gotten rid of all that background kind of mottle that was included, while kind of preserving the actual meat of the mask that we wanted to use. So I feel like we can proceed with that by just hitting go. I can close the histogram again, and we just need to blur this mask now a little bit before using it. We don't have to go crazy. So just drag the mask blur across, and I think one blur will do just fine on this. We drag the mask across to the body of this image here. If you haven't used masks before, that's how you can apply those. And we can now see we've got a predominantly red masked image. That's showing you the areas that we're not going to be working on, and the parts you can see are the areas we are going to be working on. So let's start work on those yellows and start to change the colours of those. Now we're going to open curves for this. Again, open a preview window, and because it's too yellow and I want more red in it, I'm just going to select just the red channel and start to bring that up a little bit. Now you can see at this point, if you went crazy, it'd start to look a little bit wacky, to be honest with you. You need to be careful and do this kind of in steps rather than all at once in one big adjustment. It's much better to make small incremental changes and get it how you want it that first time around, rather than having to go back and try again and again and again. Now, that's kind of brought in these rusty colours, which I quite like, but the low level signals, the kind of fainter stuff, I'd like if that were coming out that little bit more kind of red, if you like. So to do that, I'm going to put some pips to protect the rest of the green histogram, but bring down the low end of it. And you can see, hopefully there, the effect. If I just make it too pronounced, you can see this is bringing this the lower parts of the colours, the dimmer parts, towards, well, kind of a burgundy at that point, but we want them just to be that little bit more red, that little richer. And I think that has the desired effect. Now on the opposite side of that green curve, you can actually add some more yellow to the highlights just by raising up this higher point. So if I took it to the extreme and showed you hopefully these areas here, they're starting to clip and look a little bit wild, but if we just take it back down a peg or two and maybe just a little boost like this, that's having a really nice effect. It's giving, I think, some extra depth to this image, which was originally just kind of one yellow colour, and instead it's now a kind of a progression from almost a coppery red out here to sort of a deep red / weak burgundy to kind of yellows on the inside, and that's all just from this one colour and this one sort of curves adjustment. Don't be shy about taking some time with this and just taking your time and getting it right. There is no rush, and the longer you spend getting this right now is actually going to save you time in the long run, even though it might feel like a bit of a slog having to do all this right now. So I'm done with that old mask because we have significantly changed the image. Now we can't really use that anymore. It's no longer valid, so I'll just close that down. And I think the next part of the image that I really want to work on is probably going to be these blues in the center. They're looking a little bit muted and washed out. So I'm going to now select, because it looks blue, I'm going to select the blue mask, drag that and drop it on the image. So that's done a wonderful job of isolating out that blue signal in there, and it's got none of the background, so we don't need to do the clipping trick or anything like that. It does have some harsh edges, so I'm just going to apply a little bit of a mask blur to that. I think maybe one more step. It's not critical to judge this to perfection or anything like that by any means. This is all about as subtle as a hammer through the window, but it still works regardless. So if we just open now the curves transformation tool again, make use of that preview. It's really important that you keep an eye on what you're doing. It's quite easy to lose sight of what you were aiming to actually initially set out and change about the image and end up totally miles away from what you had envisioned at the start. And again, we're going to use that same kind of trick of raising up the color we wanted. That blue brings some life into that channel, but it started to go that little bit purple, if you notice. Depending on your monitor calibration, you may be able to see that or not. So we want to add in that little bit more green now to bring it back to almost a teal color. You see, if we go too far, it starts to go a bit kind of aqua sort of colored. It's not the color we want. Oxygen 3 should be teal, so I'm going to bring that almost in line with the blue there. That looks quite good to my eye. And if we just go cycle back and forth a few times, it seems like preview's broken down, so I'll just make a fresh one. Yeah, cycle back and forth a few times. That's having a nice effect. I just want to really see what I'm doing here, and sometimes this is a good pointer at this time. If your colors are too muted, just bring up the saturation a little bit as an interim adjustment to kind of really see what you're working on. So I think that looks good. It looks maybe like there's a little bit too much green in there. Again, this is just one of those things. Just take your time and try and really see what you're changing about the image, and just keep referencing back. Is this what you wanted from it? And I think for me at this point, that's fine. We can always make further adjustments down the line. But again, because we've made quite a significant change to the image, we're going to want to go ahead and close that old mask now. We no longer can really use that. It's not valid to the image beneath because it's been significantly transformed. So I'm going to get rid of that mask. And now I think we've raised that up. By contrast, I probably want now a red mask. We brought some reds into this original yellow region, so the red mask is going to do a great job of picking those out for us, hopefully at this point. So I'll just try one of those, and certainly it has. It's picked up all those great. So again, just make use of this mask blurring tool, and just again think about what you want from this image. Try and envision what colors you need to change and in what proportions. And while it might seem complicated at the start, it really will start to make sense the longer you do this. So I want a little bit more red vibrance in the middle of it there, but perhaps remove a little bit from the top end. What does it look like with a little bit removed from the bottom end? It starts to look wrong, so I want to leave that in. That's fine. And let's take a look. That's maybe a step too far. I could be going a little overzealous there. Right. Up the green, just a touch, to bring some kind of golden tones into it. Again, just drop the lower tones of the green. And hopefully you can see the effect we're having. We've got that kind of stepped colour again, going from kind of light reds to coppery tones to yellows now in the middle. And I'll just boost the saturation a touch. I think I could apply that at this point, but maybe just a general RGBK adjustment, just to boost the whole thing just a little bit. Lend some vibrance to the overall effect would be good at this point. And I'll just go ahead and apply it at that. And as it happens, I think I'm going to go ahead and apply that second step too. That looks quite cool. Again, it's all just color preferences. We're all going to like different things, but this is just a basic tutorial to get you off the ground and show you what you can do using this kind of method and really make the image your own. So I think at this point now I'd like to probably make an overall curves adjustment to sort of finally try and bring that image to life before I put the stars back in. So this is curves again with a preview, RGBK selected. I'm just going to use generally a very weak S shape for this and kind of bring it into that kind of dynamic appearance that comes from those S's without hopefully blowing things out too much. And hopefully you can see there the effect that that's had. It's made the foreground object really pop out from that background. It's gone more to a neutral grey down here, and you can really see these colours really popping out now. So finally I think we need to just rename this to Starless, and I'll go ahead and put the stars back in. But before I do that, I generally like to use a bit of morphology to kind of reduce these stars and really turn down the lights on them, because I think in narrowband images it doesn't want to be a really star dominated thing, not like a broadband image where big stars are quite nice to see sometimes. So we go down to morphology, open morphological transformation. It'll come on at this kind of setting, and you want to drag it down to maybe 75% or something like that. Just drag it across, and hopefully you can see if I just go back and forth again, it really turns down the lights on these and minimizes them quite a lot. So at this point we can go ahead now and use Pixel Math to put the stars back in. So I wanted to create a new target, and this is just stars plus starless. Just go ahead and apply that, and we do have at this point a decent final image. The colors have gone a little bit crazy just for the sake of rushing my way through this tutorial just to show you, but you can take as long as you like and get this just how you want it, really. I'm happy with this for now. I think maybe these darker regions of dust, like this leaping jaguar here and things like that, could do with bringing forth. So at this point I'd probably use the scripts, utilities, and dark structure enhance. That should do a good job of bringing things forwards. We'll just see how that turns out. So it has livened those up a little bit. It's had the effect of raising this dust to the foreground as well. It's made the image look a little bit more 3D. So I do like that effect, and hopefully you can see at this point how this is working, and the power kind of these tools when used in this order in conjunction with one another. And this really is how I'm kind of processing all my images at this point. It's giving this lovely like I've mentioned a few times, it's giving this lovely stepped kind of depth effect to an image that otherwise shouldn't really have it by rights. It's just made from two colours. It's just been red and blue, and yet we've got lots more tonality coming through, and just really bringing this image to life, I think. So that's just about everything for this. Now, there is an optional step which I'm going to show in just a moment for anybody who uses Topaz. That's an AI denoising and sharpening software, which I think is absolutely fantastic. If I'm being honest with you, I bought it for myself and I've been using it a while, and I do have a video talking about Topaz if you'd like to see it in action some more. For everybody interested in actually purchasing Topaz as well, I do have an affiliate link in the description box down below, and a discount code, so you could get yourself some really rather fantastic software at a decent discount, and in doing so also massively help me out if you would be so kind if you fancied that software. But by no means is it required. This is a finished image. I think it looks quite cool. It could have done with a little bit less of a heavy hand when processing this, but hopefully you can see I'm trying to do this to a limited amount of time. So at this point anyway, I would probably, since I have Topaz, I would save this out and just call it Rosette. That will, well, version 1. That's fine. I'm just going to save it as a TIFF to the desktop. Hopefully this should come up with the saving options. There we go. You don't need it to be 32 bits, 16 bits is fine. Just go ahead and save that. And at this point I'd probably open Topaz Denoise. Yep, that one's fine. I like to run things through Topaz Denoise first. As I said, this is totally optional stuff. Your image is fine without this, but if you do have Topaz, it is going to make your images better. it just always does for me, at least. So let's zoom in maybe on this region here and see this kind of dust, if we can bring that to life a little bit more. So clear has maybe not had the desired effect, but low light looks to have done a decent job. Standard, I think, is overall my favourite out of these four. It's sharpened things up just nicely and made those background colours kind of go nice and smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and save a standard mode version, and I'll finish by bringing that into Gigapixel. This is another fantastic tool, but it likes to be fed kind of lower noise images than Denoise itself. So this is version 1 Denoise AI standard. I'll just open that and go ahead and look at a decent region that's going to kind of show us what we want to see from this image. Maybe back down here where we were working originally. This should do, so I'll let it process for a few seconds. This is showing you the original now, which was passed through Denoise AI, and these are the different versions. Of course, you can change the settings on all of these, the amount of noise reduction, the amount of blur reduction, and just the strength of the overall effect can be changed, and you might find one of these that you really like. Like for me, I'm not so much a fan of this very compressed on this image. It starts to look a little bit painted, nearly. I think it looks kind of odd. But this version, Art and CG, actually looks quite nice. I think it's breathed a bit of fresh life into that kind of dusty region there, and I'm probably going to go ahead with that version. Yeah, that's really brought this up to the next level. So I'm going to go ahead and save that one. And the final step really is I tend not to use just what Topaz kind of puts out. I instead load these now back into PixInsight while the other images are open. So this is the Denoise AI and then Gigapixel AI version. And I'm just going to open that up and I'll rename it as the AI image. I'll just call this one No AI. Keep it as simple as possible, as I am a simple man and easily confused. Now, there is a nice big difference between these two images, but I'm like the denoised one maybe looks a little bit of a step too far, if you like. So I'm just going to resample this to match the scale of the other image by going to geometry. As I did a 2x upsample, I need to turn this back 50%. So resample and select the correct image. AI 50%. Alright, so that's resampled and it now matches the pixel scale, if you will, of this. And we've got all that benefit of the extra sharpness. Now, I'd probably like something in between these two images, so again, I'm just going to use Pixel Math. You can really experiment with how strong you'd like this effect to be or not. You might just like what Denoise AI gives you once you're finished. But like me, you also might want to blend in some of that original image. So I'm going to do AI. I think I want it to be 75% of the contribution towards this next image. And no AI, I want to blend that back in at strength of 25%, of course. So we'll apply that. And now we've got created here, image 82 in this case, a happy medium between the two, where it's got that little bit of kind of more believable granularity of an image, but also that fantastic, beautiful, smooth noise that kind of Topaz gives out, and that kind of hint of extra detail over the original image, which I think really does wonders in bringing these images to life and making them stand out that little bit more from the crowd, and just getting the best from them. As you can see, there's a nice difference there in that sharpness. Some of these stars have been sharpened a little bit. Oftentimes, it's worth mentioning at this point, I like to use Topaz on the image before I put the stars back in. But I just wanted to complete the tutorial for people who don't have Topaz in the first place, and I've gone on way too long now, so I am going to wrap things up. I hope that this was useful to you and that you've learned maybe a thing or two and been inspired to try different things with your own images. So with all that said, I'd just like to wrap things up and say thank you so much indeed for watching to each and every one of you, and a very special thank you, as always, Goes out to all my YouTube channel members for the support that you guys give. I really can't thank you enough. So I think with all that said now, that's just about everything. I hope that you've enjoyed this and maybe learned a thing or two. So thanks for watching, and until next time, clear skies.